Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, Georgia, District 6, Rich McCormick. Dr. McCormick with us, one of the big supporters of the One Big Beautiful Law. Dr. McCormick, thanks for being with us today and the Peach Crew.
Hello,
Thanks. Good to be with you guys. Hey, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't you just weigh in here? Let's just start with the President Trump's decision to send defensive weapons to Ukraine. Seemed like he was overruling a decision made earlier by Pete Hegseth, one of his secretaries of Department of Defense, and probably the State Department in Rubio that were trying to cut back. Rich McCormick, you served, you know the military well. What are your thoughts?
Well, from a strategic standpoint, we all have our own opinions. I've said from the onset that if you want to have China and Iran and North Korea have more food stores and be more powerful, then go ahead and empower Russia to have control of 70% of Europe's grain. Europe needs Ukraine. Think about this. NATO doesn't need Ukraine necessarily, but if you think about it, that advances the Russian bases closer to all the NATO countries. Putin's already said he wants Lithuania, he wants Estonia, he wants the Balkans. He wants the old, so matter of fact, he doesn't just want the old USSR, he wants the old Russian Empire. If you hear him quote Peter the Great or Catherine the Great, he says, the only way I can secure my borders is to expand them. This is a guy who understands Ukraine is a top 5 country in the world in resources. I thought this was a no-brainer from the get-go. If you really, really wanted to crack down and win this instantly, you tell India, hey, you cannot trade in America unless you stop buying Russian oil. I'll sell you all the oil you need from the United States. Europe cannot buy oil back from India, which is, by the way, funding this war. Secondarily, I'd give Ukraine all the weapons they can handle, and this war would have been over in a year if you did those two things alone. And I've talked to the Supreme Allied Commander multiple times in Europe. I'm not talking about little old me. I'm talking about a 4-star general whose region of expertise is that. I said, is this a winnable war? He said, absolutely. We could win this in short order. All you have to do is commit. That we've done this over and over and over again historically. If you look at Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, whenever we play this half measures game, we do very poorly. As soon as we commit, it's over. We're the most powerful nation in the world. Why do we always do things in half measures, which extends this whole industrial industry and military sales, and basically does nothing for America but just extend a war and extend the meat grinder, which kills a lot more Ukrainians and a lot more Russians, which the president said he does not want. You're right, John. You mentioned it. He's frustrated. He does not want this war to continue. He said he wants to solve this war. All we have to do is commit to it, and it's over. Make sure the sanctions don't fund this war anymore, and that you supply Ukraine with the weapons they need. And they've already shown they could take out 50% of Russia's armor. This is a third world country trying to fight a first world country, and they took out half of their armor in 1 year. Almost 1 million casualties from a far inferior country with 1/5 the population and 1/20th, or at least 1/10 of the GDP. I think it's a no-brainer, but I get it. Other people we have devout isolationists in our party that say we shouldn't be involved in Israel. We shouldn't be involved around the world. I disagree. Every country that's ever become an isolationist, including China back in the 15th century, had become obsolete and not applicable to empires, if you will. And you can say we're not an empire, but we are definitely at the top of the world heap right now. If we become isolationists, people will stop respecting you. You will not have the same power you have right now. Russia has extreme power beyond their GDP. They have a $2 trillion GDP. That's nothing. That's what? Germany alone has 2.5 times their GDP. But Russia's all over the world, and therefore they have extreme trade power and extreme influence on the rest of the world because they're exerting their power. I just look at history and what we learn from that, and that's my lessons learned, but everybody has a different opinion. I get it.
Yeah, I have a little bit different opinion, Congressman. I don't believe, I totally supported sending the Patriot missiles. I don't believe I have been opposed to funding the United States being in Ukraine. Ukraine is more of Europe's problem, not the United States. To me, you put America first, Americans' interests first. I totally supported what we did in Israel. Let's keep the fight against terrorists over there. But I definitely do not believe I'm one of these, and I'm not an isolationist. I take it case by case. We've got Zelensky, and a lot of these folks in Ukraine are using a lot of the money that's getting sent to them for their own to enrich themselves. And that's just some of the reason that I don't support doing anything else in Ukraine. I did agree with the Patriot missiles. I think President Trump did the right thing sending them, but no more. It's time to put a stop to it.
Okay, let me point out a couple of inconsistencies, and Debbie, and I know there's a lot of clickbait out there on this, but Zelensky's not being enriched by this. As a matter of fact, when I went over and talked to Zelensky personally with the Intel committee, and I said, if you want to, this is the first year. I said, if you want to lose this war, make sure that, spend money on teachers' pensions, spend money on things that you guys would spend on money. America's not going to sustain this war, I promise you. As a matter of fact, I've been very clear, we should not give them any money, only military aid to destroy Russian equipment and personnel. You talked about Israel. Keep the bad guys over there engaged, right? But if you think about it, if he expands his war into non-NATO countries in Europe, it will affect us. It will affect the peace process. President Trump knows that. That's why he's come out strong. He said, I want an end to this. As a matter of fact, if Zelensky would have left his country, this war would have been over and Russia would have owned all of Ukraine. The fact that Zelensky said to me when he said, look, you can have as many people as you want here. You can literally tell me where to spend the money. I'm just trying to survive. I thought that was a very sincere statement. He wants accountability. He got elected on the fact that he was going to get rid of the fraud. Now you can see places like Mexico and other places like Romania and other places around the world that have a lot of problems with their government. It's not an easy thing to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. We see that in America, and we have one of the most efficient governments in the world, still fraught with all kinds of wasteful spending. But we cannot think that Putin's always going to say. All of a sudden going to say, I'm satisfied with what I have. He's proven that he doesn't even want to deal with Trump, the most powerful man in the world, and come to peace terms because he doesn't take this seriously. He's not going to stop. This guy is a KGB agent from the old USSR that has a grip on Europe that we don't want to have. It's going to affect everybody. It doesn't just affect Europe, by the way. These mineral rights that Trump negotiated, that's going to benefit us for generations. That's going to be trillions of dollars. We're going to make money off this ultimately. And I'm not saying that's why we should be there. We shouldn't be the police of the world. And I agree with you. Europe has to be invested in this. But Europe, when you compare their GDP to us, we rank about 20th out of all the nations that are investing in that specific war. We're not leading the way, but we're definitely part of this. And we, in good faith, signed a treaty with Ukraine when they gave up their nuclear arms, saying, if they are invaded, we will come to your aid. Do you tell your children when you shake on something and you give your word that you're going to back out of it when it's not convenient, or I just don't feel like it, when it's not politically expedient? I don't think so. I think we made a commitment and we stand by our words. That's America.
I think the biggest commitment is to America first and Americans first. And I think you're a great congressman. We're going to have to agree to disagree on Ukraine. But
let's get Sally involved. Sally, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, my question is, and I understand we made a commitment. We need to live up to our commitments. I completely agree. We can't go back on our word. But has the Ukraine lived up to their commitments?
no.
Yeah. So if first of all, let's address what happened. This probably would have never happened if President Trump was the president at the time. Notice they didn't invade Crimea during President Trump. They did it during Obama's. They invaded Ukraine during Biden's. That weakness that people think they can take advantage of is what started this to begin with. This war would have been over in a year if we totally committed. We'd spend less, not more. If you trickle out help, it extends war. Whenever we do surge ops, it essentially ended all the war ops in Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea. Whenever we came strong, it was over quickly. You spend less money, you spend less lives by just coming at it strong. Has Ukraine? Absolutely. They're the ones suffering the brunt of this issue. They're the ones fighting 30,000 Koreans now because we haven't ended this war. They're dying in droves. They're spending all their money on this war. They're the ones that have been invaded. They're the ones that are paying the true price. European troops have not been committed to this. They have put a tremendous amount of assets into this, but absolutely, Ukraine is the one paying the price, just like Afghanistan. When I was in Afghanistan last year, we didn't lose hardly anybody. We lost onesie, twosie here, but most of the people I was treating, most of the people who were dying almost exclusively were from Afghani troops who were loyal to their country, who were just as patriotic as you and I, who were trying to pay the price for freedom for their country, just like we did. And by the way, we had already paid the price. When Biden did that horrible withdrawal, we had fewer people in Afghanistan than we have in Spain right now. We've never even fought a war in Spain. Quite frankly, the price had been paid, $2 trillion, 20 years, 2,465 lives, just to hand it back to the same people we took it from. And look where we're at now, right now. You have multiple terrorist bases right there, trained by Taliban. You have ISIS back there. I mean, we had paid the price. It was a stable country, but Afghanis were paying the price, just like the Ukrainians are paying the price right now. But we withdrew. And where are we at? Now we have bad guys basically making deals with Russia and China and being exploited and creating more terrorists abroad. That's a bad investment.
Well, I think that to your point, Congressman, I think that, and you know, you and I bantered back and forth on in groups about Ukraine and support, and you know, Lindsey Graham's position and that kind of thing. War is complicated. There's no doubt about that. And when you kind of go through all of these scenarios and all of the involvement and that kind of thing, and there's, you know, there's good actors, there's bad actors, then there's the people that fight the fight that are just there because they want to see freedom, and you see how complicated it is. I understand American involvement to a certain point. However, at the end of the day, when it's affecting American lives and
Yep.
it's affecting American positions, and it's not a position that puts America first.
I think
You
it
know,
does.
it, and I understand what you're saying. The thing is that we don't, as American citizens and the ones that always end up footing the bill, I mean, Americans pay the price for things like this. You know, we do a significant amount of military related work in manufacturing and things like that. So we see it, and, you know, it kind of begs the question, okay, we see the Epstein comments at the same time as the commitment to send more help to the Ukraine. And, you know, people may say, well, look, the whole Epstein commentary is a distraction because now we're getting more involvement in Ukraine. It's always a very complicated situation. In my personal view, is the more that we get involved in these war situations, the worse it is for American citizens, because we end up paying the price. It seems we have to go in there full throated and, you know, really make a big difference. If you look at wars historically, one where, you know, you look at Korea versus Vietnam, we could talk about this all day long. Why were we successful with Korea versus what happened with Vietnam? I think you're right. You know, you trickle help out and it becomes a disaster. You go in there, you get it done, you get out, and then you send in the missionaries. You help, you know, you have the missionaries go in like they did in Korea. That made a huge difference.
Well,
You know, culture
a
plays a
couple
big
points of
role.
order, though, because I agree with you, ladies. I'm an American first guy, 100%. I would give my life for this country today. I would allow my sons to join the military, to the Marine Corps, and give their lives for this country. That's how much America first I am. I'm not just talk. I've been out there and done that. I took a huge pay cut to be in Congress, not because of the fact that I just turned half of America against me. I was a popular guy. Everybody likes Marines. Everybody likes doctors. But when you join the Congress, you take a huge pay cut and half America instantly hates you. And then inside of our own party, about half of your party hates you as soon as you get done with the
That's
primary.
true.
So well, let me make the case for America first on this. When we allow bad actors like Russia to invade Ukraine and we do nothing, we sit on the sidelines, it gets worse. Without our involvement, he would have taken Ukraine. Absolutely. And then he would have gone to Latvia, Estonia, and other countries. And eventually we'd be drawn into this whether we wanted to or not, just like World War II. We pretend like those days don't exist anymore. Look at Germany, who has the biggest economy in NATO, by far could outperform Russia if they're armed, but they're not. We disarmed them after World War II. They've been a pacifist country. Now they're rearming. As a matter of fact, tongue in cheek, they said, somebody said, let me just get this straight. President Trump wants us to rearm, march through Poland, and fight Russia. Just want to put that down in writing. I was like, well, when you put it that way, it sounds bad, but that's not what he means. He means stick up for Russia, right? I mean, stick up against Russia as a European country. Because actually, Germany could rearm and take over the entire European. They had the largest economy by far, and they have one of the largest populations. But what we're saying here is if we participate in good faith with NATO, which is the whole reason NATO was coming to existence, was to keep Russia from invading Europe again, from taking their assets and giving those spoils to other countries like North Korea, Iran, and China, which they are allies with. If that doesn't make this a more dangerous and more expensive world and put America last, what does? And I'm just looking out for America's future. I don't want our kids involved in any wars. I don't want boots on the ground.
We got 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes. I got to get your comment on. Wait, guys. I got 3 minutes. The Epstein files. MAGA split over it. Yeah. We're with Dr. Rich McCormick, Congressman, Republican, Georgia District 6.
You picked the hardest topics today, man.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I got 3 minutes.
We agree on everything but two things.
And so those are the two things.
Files are tough. It depends on who you believe, right? There's a lot of conspiracy out there, and I don't know if it's true. I'm sincerely believe that Trump was not involved in any of that, because if it was, it would have come out. With all this research they try to do, all the ways that they try to keep him out of the presidency, that would have come out. There's no doubt in my mind that Trump was not involved in that. But the question is, how many people are involved and why isn't it coming out? Because it is pretty weird when you have that many powerful people, probably on both sides of politics, that they don't release anything. Maybe there's not a list, but there's some knowledge out there. The surroundings of his death are pretty suspicious, but I don't know. But somebody knows that young lady that was his right hand, she knows for sure. She can make a list off the top of her head that would probably have 10 very powerful people, including former presidents, that would be awe-inspiring, I'm sure. So the question is, why aren't they twisting arms? Why aren't they leaning on her? I don't know. Well, actually, I do. I have my ideas.
What's your idea?
But I don't know if we're.
I want to know your idea.
With Miss Biondi is she made a promise that she couldn't actually fulfill, and that's the only problem. But people make mistakes all the time, and I don't want to see anybody lose their job over a single statement or anything like that. But I thought that was kind of an overreach.
Should you just do a mea?
Will there be a?
Yes, I think so.
Will there be a congressional investigation or anything like that?
I would be surprised if there's not. I'll talk to Jim Jordan about it. It'd be interesting to see what judicial says on this. Jim Jordan, by the way, is a brilliant dude. I don't think he's the hardcore rabble-rouser he once was, but he's on media more than anybody else in Congress, probably in the Senate too. And that guy's wicked smart. I've talked to him like, are we really making a difference? I was so frustrated during the Biden administration. He's like, actually, we have. And he started listening to the things that we've done to keep to flip all the media on its head and to keep accountability. And that guy's wicked smart. So I'm going to ask him some questions about that.
Rich, Miss Maxwell has a wealth of information. She's sitting in federal prison in Tallahassee, Florida. What I would like to see, and a lot of MAGA would like to see, was for her to testify before Congress. She has the little black book, which they are keeping sealed. And I would like to see all of that before Congress. Americans deserve the truth. And
yeah, I would be surprised if we don't get some sort of hearings on this. Look forward to it.
Glad to hear that.
And Congressman, thank you so much for serving. I know it's hard. I love you to death. In the 7th district of Georgia, we.
All right, there
I
goes
appreciate
Sally.
you guys too, and thanks for having me on. Hey, we can disagree. We're not a cult. We can disagree inside of our church. I love you guys too. Seriously,
we love you.
Mad respect. Thanks.
How do people follow you, Rich?
Hey, just look at my website. Just Google my name. You'll see half a dozen ways to look at me, whether Instagram, Facebook, you name it. I'm very available. If you have a problem with #1 in constituents in America, constituent services, bring it on. We'll help.
Rich McCormick, Dr. Rich McCormick, thank you for being with us. Want to thank